a tale of secrets, betrayal, and unanswered questions. Stay with me because the truth of this case is darker than you think. She was only 18, but the pain she carried was older than her years. Before she died, she left behind a handwritten note, not to say goodbye, but to accuse. She named 2 men, and then she was gone. This is the story of Elena Agul, a teenager, a daughter, a victim, and maybe a girl the world failed to protect. Elena Agul lived in the small Turkish city of Igdir. She was preparing for university, smiling in her photos. To the outside world, she was calm and quiet, just a teenage girl with her life ahead of her. But behind her silence was a storm, a dark, secret pain she couldn't carry any longer. She had been writing it down, planning, until the day came when she couldn't stay quiet anymore. On September 30th, 2021, Elena fell from the 5th floor of her apartment. Police rushed to the scene. People gathered. Some whispered it was suicide, but her family knew something was wrong. Then they found the letter. In Elena's hand, Elena named 2 people. Gökhan Argan, a man 43 years old businessman, and his 21-year-old son, Göktürk. Göktürk was her classmate. Elena's body was taken in for forensic examination, and the report that came back was devastating. The coroner confirmed what everyone feared. She had died instantly from the fall. Multiple skull fractures, a brain hemorrhage, and massive internal trauma. There were no stab wounds, no strangulation marks, no defensive injuries. To the pathologist, it looked like a clear case of death by jumping, a suicide. But if that were true, why the note? Why would a young girl, just 18 years old with no history of self-harm, leave behind a single name and no explanation? The mystery deepened when the toxicology report came in. Elena had a blood alcohol level of 0.4%, not enough to be fully intoxicated, but enough to suggest she had been under stress, possibly trying to calm herself. Some speculated she had a drink to build up courage. Others believed it was planted, or that someone had manipulated her into that fragile state. Even more rumors began circulating online. Was she pregnant? Was that why she was blackmailed? Had she been drugged? But the autopsy crushed those theories. She was not pregnant. There were no drugs in her system, no sign of a struggle. Legally, the evidence pointed to one conclusion: Elena had jumped. But emotionally, morally, the case was anything but closed, because investigators still had that handwritten letter. Elena had written it shortly before her death. A simple, devastating sentence: "If I die, it was Gökhan Argan who did this." She wrote that Gökhan had blackmailed her, abused her, and ruined her life. It wasn't just a goodbye. It was a message to the world. These people broke me. And then she was gone. Gökhan wasn't a stranger. He was a family friend, someone Elena once trusted. But she said that trust was shattered when he started threatening her, allegedly using private messages, photos, and secrets as blackmail. Elena wrote that she was being watched, controlled, that he wouldn't let her live in peace, that he humiliated her, and she had no escape. She also wrote that his son Göktürk had also mistreated her. She handed this letter to the world as her final truth, but instead of justice came silence. After Elena's death made national news, police detained both Gökhan and Göktürk. People hoped justice was finally coming. When Gökhan stood in court, he didn't deny knowing Elena. He claimed they were in a relationship. The most heartbreaking part? After Elena died, after she named her abuser, the court let him go. The man she said destroyed her life walked out free. Both were released under judicial control. Gökhan was accused of blackmail, sexual assault, and encouraging suicide. The charges were serious, but still, no trial came. And then, like many other cases in Turkey, the headlines moved on. But her story didn't end there. Elena's story is not just about one girl. It's about thousands of girls in Turkey and around the world who live in fear. Fear of not being believed, fear of being blamed, fear that if they speak out, nothing will happen, or worse, the abuser will walk free. In her letter, she asked for justice. But what she got was silence, and that silence is what killed her. Elena's body was laid to rest in Iğdır Asri Cemetery. Her family stood beside her grave, still in shock. The people she accused still walk free. The investigation slowed. The cameras turned away. But her words remain. Her handwritten letter. Her last live stream posts. Her school notebook filled with dreams she'll never live. Elena's father was shattered. He said, "My daughter was killed, not with a gun, but with fear, shame, and silence." He didn't know how serious she was, not until it was too late for the public. This letter changed everything. It wasn't just a suicide, it was a statement, a scream, a last attempt to expose the truth. And when the media got hold of that note, outrage erupted. Why had this man, someone she directly accused, been released so easily? Why weren't the police doing more? And most importantly, if Elena truly jumped, was it still suicide? Or had Gökhan mentally and emotionally destroyed her until she saw no other way out? The pressure was building. Social media was on fire. Protests were brewing. Elena's face was now everywhere, but justice was still nowhere to be found. That's when the public made their voices heard and forced a chilling case to be reopened. Elena's death wasn't just a personal tragedy anymore. It had become a national outcry. As the contents of her letter spread online, people across Turkey were stunned. News anchors read her final words aloud on air. Social media was flooded with hashtags like "Justice for Elena." Teenagers, women's rights activists, even celebrities all started demanding answers. Because to them, this wasn't just a suicide. It was a case of emotional murder. A young woman broken down by fear, pressure, and blackmail until she saw no way out. And yet the man she accused still walking free? People were furious. Why was Gökhan not in jail? Why did the legal system ignore her plea for help? Elena's father, still reeling from the loss of his daughter, became the face of the movement. He gave interviews, holding up her letter in front of cameras, his voice shaking as he said, "My daughter didn't kill herself. She was murdered. She left the truth behind, and no one is listening." Activists from the group We Will Stop Femicide released a powerful statement condemning the justice system and calling Elena's death a clear failure of protection laws. They pointed out that Gökhan had already been reported, yet he was allowed to walk free despite a clear warning that Elena's life was in danger. Under mounting pressure, authorities had no choice. Within days, the case was reopened and a full investigation into Gökhan began. And this time, they found more than just a letter. Prosecutors uncovered messages, photos, and voice recordings. There's evidence that backed up Elena's claims that Gökhan had been threatening her, harassing her, blackmailing her with private content, and pressuring her into silence. Some reports even claimed he offered her money to stay quiet. Others said he manipulated her into trusting him, only to turn against her the moment she tried to walk away. This was no longer about a fall from a building. It was about the fall of an abuser's mask. In late 2021, Gökhan was finally arrested again. This time not just as a suspect, but as a man officially charged with causing another person to commit suicide by threat and force. A rare, serious charge in Turkish law, one that suggested the court believed Elena's death wasn't just a suicide, but something much more premeditated. And as the case headed to trial, the country braced for what would come next. Because what started as a single girl's silent fall was now turning into a national reckoning. By the time the trial began in early 2022, the name Elena Agul was known across the nation. The courtroom was packed. Activists sat in the front row. Journalists filled every bench. Elena's family sat quietly holding photos of their daughter. Not smiling pictures, but solemn reminders of who she was before everything fell apart. This wasn't just a trial, it was a fight for justice, a chance to prove that Elena hadn't died in vain. The Arjun walked into court with a calm expression. No handcuffs, no emotion. He denied the charges. He claimed he never forced Aliana into anything, that she had been troubled, that their relationship was complicated but consensual, and that her death was her own doing, not his. But prosecutors came prepared. They presented dozens of messages, voice recordings, and Alana's own police statement filed just one day before her death. They outlined how Gökhan had used intimidation, blackmail, and emotional control to isolate her, how he threatened to destroy her reputation if she spoke out, how he broke her spirit until she saw no way out. And then they read her final note. "If I die, it's Gökhan Arjun who's responsible." There was silence in the room. No one spoke, no one moved. Even the judge paused before continuing. The defense tried to argue that Elena's note was emotional, not legal proof, that she was unstable, that she drank, that she made the choice herself. But it wasn't enough. After months of hearings, testimony, and growing public pressure, the court delivered its verdict in April 2022. Gökhan Argun was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison for driving another person to end their own life by force and threat. Additional years were added for assault, blackmail, and intentional injury. It was one of the rare cases in Turkish legal history where someone was held fully responsible, not for committing murder with their hands, but for murdering someone's will to live. Outside the courtroom, Elena's father cried not from relief, but from exhaustion. He told reporters, "This won't bring my daughter back, but maybe it will protect someone else's." And yet, Gökhan didn't give up. He appealed the ruling, dragging the case back into the courts. For over 2 years, the fight continued. Elena's name kept trending. People didn't forget. They waited for the final answer. And then on November 2024, Elena's voice had been heard. The Supreme Court of Turkey, Yargıtay, upheld the decision. The life sentence stood. Justice at last was official. But the pain that never left, because the verdict may have closed the case, but it didn't erase the question that still haunts everyone who followed it. Now I ask you this: did Elena truly choose to die? Or was she slowly, cruelly broken down until she gave up on living? She named them both. Gökhan Argun, the man who destroyed her peace, and his son, Göktürk Argun, who she said also hurt her. And yet, while Gökhan was finally sentenced to life in prison, his son walks free. Elena's words were clear, but even her truth wasn't enough to bring them both to justice. So I ask you, what kind of justice listens to a dying girl, but only half believes her? How many more letters will it take? How many more daughters must fall before the silence is broken for good? Drop your thoughts in the comments, say her name. Let the world know what happened to Elena Ogul, because her voice still echoes, and we must never stop listening. Rest in power, Elena. You deserved more. You deserve to be heard.